public space program we should have. But in my case, when this one particular dream kept coming back and forth quite frequently, is I would be standing around on the edge of the big giant canyon on Mars, and I could, in the out-of-body experience, I could just lean forward and put my arms out and kind of like a bird, I guess, and fly over. And I could fly down into the valley and over areas where had been civilizations, thousands and thousands of years before. In fact, and part of the history and learning, we are somewhat the descendants of the Martians, if you will. And by me going back and looking at some of the ancient ruins and things, I know where our origin was before we wound up having to migrate to a more hospitable environment here on this planet Earth. So interesting enough that a lot of us, when we start getting together and start talking and bringing up the memories, having had in this particular life of mine of 77 years, I'm finding times when there's a missing time, but yet after the hypnotic regression, I'm finding out it wasn't missing. I was just busy doing another activity over on Mars, such as a pilot. I was flying the little craft I call the Hopper, and this is where I met. Let's see, the two people there. One of you, Jana, you guys can help me out here. I'm having one of those dropouts. Andrew Bashago and William Whitecrow had gotten themselves in a situation, and I came in with the Hopper, landed it close to where that there were still some kinds of creatures and beings on the planet Mars that kind of like a pterodactyl or something, but I was able to land it close and pick them up. Now, these stories, we start talking about these now, and that's probably part of the reason why we get our memories wiped, as they used to call it, or do now. And because other people will say, oh, hogwash, oh, that's a bunch of hooey. And you know what? Until they've had the same experiences or had the opportunities to get with someone like Dr. Sasha Lessin and have a hypnotic regression and going back and finding out, not just in this current life experience of mine, 77 years, go back in past life experience and find out other things that we've been involved with. So we are really, really into the age and the time of disclosure of not just what's happening now, but in our past lives. We're going to find that, I'll throw this in real fast. My wife, Fran, she and I, she was raised in Canada. I was raised in Texas. We both wound up working for the Boeing company and up in Seattle, about halfway in between for both of us. And both of us went to an organization called Parents Without Partners. Well, a month and a half later, now that's kind of crazy, most people would say, but a month and a half later, I asked her to marry me again because we found out now that we had been a couple in our past lives. So there's a lot of experiences that we are in this shell, as TJ says, and that's what our human bodies are, is being used as a shell. And what we're doing is learning and picking up where we left off. And hopefully now the disclosure is coming more and more real. A lot more of us are going to be able to come forward and find out just exactly who we are, what we are, and what part we have played in this whole role of the galaxies, if you will. So if you want to pick up with that, either one of you other two, come right on. Janet or TJ.
Go ahead, TJ.
Well, we all have a purpose, and what I've learned is we're definitely all part of an experiment. And from what I can see that the government knew, and what Bob O'Dean talked about, is we're definitely being groomed for something, but no one has the exact understanding of everything, and it depends on your role in this game of life, and it's part of what out the group that Bob was with that did their own study, because and a lot of what he said rung true with me, even though he worked at a different time than I did, was the fact that we had the military industrial complex, as we might say, but we'd said the military, and then we had corporations and the World Banks, blah blah blah. We had all the different levels of humanity. But the entire problem was knowing that there were people coming and going forever. And that was pretty much proven through everything, whether you can read it or not, or know of the archives, or just know that this was common among those at the highest levels of cosmic top secret, or those that were in the military. They were much higher and more aware than people that we would put in the position of the United States of America, which now the John Q. Populace is out there finding out and demonstrating it. There are many others, but, and it had to do with the whole planet. And back during World War II, now this is what I understand as part of my truth. And Bob Dean said everything is true because each one of us is our own universe inside our own mind with our own God, right? So everything is true. So ET high-tech civilizations, at least in this reality, this consensus or this universe that we think we're sharing together, has the critical mass mind, and you'll hear that. It's the critical consciousness, and some call it the A field. Urban Laszlo does the A field, and I talked to him extensively years ago on the phone, and we did emails and stayed in touch. Urban Laszlo, so read his book, The Theory of Everything. After I'd gotten it, and he was very open to me, and then we were working with Europe and different people at a high level of intensity, I would say, in the mind, and how we all have evidence. But we're all in some kind of intensive survey of civilizations, and there's various levels of that. Now, what was concerning when I came in 1951, after the 47 incident with Roswell, there were those that wondered if they were malevolent or hostile, and that's where we get the abductee stories with Betty and Barney Hill. There were plenty before that, but that's the one that was well known as up north. But they were put back. And so when my husband and I were trained, my husband said yes, but they were put back. And when we ask about the various levels of extension of why we come and go from this planet, and Tom didn't like to talk religion or theology or history or anything to do with the creator or God. He just didn't. He didn't want that to shape. And most of the time, that was the prime directive, was not to mess with those in containers down here that were put here at various points in time. So the point of time that Tom found most curious was Hitler forward, and from World War II and the World War, and then the atomic age coming forward, and them dealing with, I guess you'd say, microcosm and down to the CERN, or the smallest microcosm, or the smallest below atom quarks and all of that. But he was changed, and Bob was changed working in, because you come in, and they both were like me. We come in a human form, and we just know with the clean slate, or so we're told from the veil forward, is that we're born, they don't let us remember the videos prior, our past life as reincarnates or reincarnitiates, or, there's a circle of life, and I think many of the Buddhist and many of the older religions believe in that. And then now with our ascension and the way we live in America, and I am one of those, as I learned about ascension and they taught me that. So as far as I'm concerned, I worked with the benevolent, meaning those that were good, or at least those that seem to be wanting us to progress and help us with things. Now, some people only meet the bad people, are the ones that say aliens don't help us, and they're taking us and they're doing evil things to us. And then a lot of people are changing their mind, realizing they were part of some experiment. They may or may not have chosen to be here, but maybe we're all part of an experience. Maybe we're all knowing that we're all a part of a long line of beings that came before us and will come after us, and we're developing. So, that they don't tell us the whole picture. They only tell us what they need us to know. And so some feel like they're working with evil, and some feel like they're working with good, dark and light, or however you perceive it. So there's different ways to think about that. And each person has their own free will. We think we have free will power. Anyway, control over your inner sanctum, or your inner self, your inner thoughts anyway. Unless you blow your brains out, I guess. Stop working your container. Otherwise, you're here with the rest of us. Now, I have lost some of the people in my group My husband is one of them, but he died of natural causes. My daughter died due to cancer. He died of pneumonia filling up, but I had to watch him die, and that's not fun. Is watching the container give out, and you start with usually the lungs and then the heart and then the mind. I've learned that from my daughter watching her, but. Anyway, I believe that life is immortal and they're going on to another level of existence, and I want to believe that, but nobody told me that. But I think from the stuff I've learned working with extraterrestrial beings that look like us, that is what goes on. Now, why we have a military, I do wonder, but I believe I don't know this, but from what I've seen and what I've experienced and what I've been allowed to know with my talents and skills is that we're here to heighten our sense of information for our soul's level or to grow. Now you can look at that scientifically, or you can look at that, in the ways of the old or old world religions, or however you want to, through the lenses that you have, or those, your perceptions, your observations. But I do believe there is a form of human intelligence, whether it's I don't know how many levels. I do believe there are various levels. And like Janet was saying, she's been in many places. Is that our oversoul? Is that our higher self? Is that parts of ourself? Yes, probably to all. And where are they? Maybe we're finding out with the slit theory and the way that we deal with I guess you could say laser, and knowing how things fall into particles and waves like on the ocean and all that, that there is a physics and a way to understand now that we didn't know. And the longer we live, the more closer we get to a higher level of understanding. And I believe that's why we're here. The human race is a hybrid race. It always has been, always will be. It is genetically manipulated. And various people and various cultures and climates are put together for whatever reasons, maybe to make better DNA, because we have 65 strains at least, and some of them are being more like Ken said, light and dark. I had my brothers, some of them were dark skinned, some were light. Same thing over in Norway. You'll see light skin and dark skin in the same family. In Brazil, blondes and blue eyes with dark hair, dark skin, and brown eyes. In my family, same thing. My daughters, I had 3 blonde hazel eyes, and the one that just died was an ET experiment, I think, and I believe I was told to do that because I remember my thoughts in making her versus the others were accidents. But I thought about, I wanted a brunette with blue eyes. I got to think about it. I worked with, to me, angels are higher selves of myself, I don't know, or beings to create what I wanted, and that's what I got. However, because she was Irish and Brazilian, and that's what the gentleman told me, that was her DNA, her sperm donor, and was that he was Brazilian and Irish. And then when we had this cancer deal, and we were working with the Nordics and those, like we have a history of those that channel people, and I guess to answer Janet's question, yes, I'm a psychic medium, and the way that we talk, for lack of better words, we're all psychic. We're all remote viewers. If you want to be, you can learn a protocol for that. But some of us choose to use it and practice it and become very good at it. And I use tarot cards. And my daughter, she always, from the time she was born, she knew she was from another planet. She knew she was not from here. She knew she worked in space. And she still read the Bible, believed everything there, and Jesus God, because that was an extraterrestrial to her. And he came and showed us the way to come and do it and leave your body and go back, and she was okay with that. So I'm so glad that gave her solace and made her feel good about the reality. And, to each his own. However you have to function, however you have to put your reality, because you're born alone and you will die alone. In other words, you come into one container, and when the container decays to a point or has been disrupted where it can't sustain life form, then it's just like an old car that stops working, no more. It no work, so it gets torn up or whatever, you're somewhere else. So I want to believe that because I have memories of past lives. So I hope that helps some. And Janet, it's your turn. Next. Off of mute, Janet.
Okay, so what are we talking about? Where are we? Okay, so ask me a question. Let's pose a question to to do the next round because I kind of
How do you feel
was
that?
very interesting. I got.
How do you feel that all